After discovering his wife's year-long affair, a betrayed husband meticulously plots the ultimate revenge to dismantle her life and destroy her lover's reputation. With cold precision, he gathers evidence, sets traps, and orchestrates their downfall, believing justice is finally in his hands. But as the dust settles, he's left with a haunting emptiness, and when a tragic twist shatters everything, he's forced to confront the devastating cost of his vengeance. What begins as a tale of betrayal and retribution spirals into a heartbreaking reckoning with guilt, love, and the irreversible consequences of revenge. I never thought my life would fall apart in a single moment. For 8 years, I thought I had everything, a stable job, a comfortable home, and a wife I adored. Laura was my everything. She was the type of person who could walk into a room and make everyone feel at ease. Her laugh lit up the darkest days, and her touch made the world feel a little less harsh. I wasn't perfect, but I tried my best to be the husband she deserved. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. I worked as a project manager at a mid-sized firm, pulling in enough money to give us a good life. Laura had her own career too, working part-time at a design agency. She liked the balance, enough work to keep her busy, but not so much that she couldn't enjoy her hobbies. She loved yoga, hiking, and going out with her friends. I never minded when she wanted to take a weekend trip with her girlfriends or hit the studio after work. I thought it was healthy. I thought we were healthy. Looking back now, I can see the cracks in the foundation. I can pinpoint the little things I ignored. A phone call she'd take in another room. The way she'd text with a slight smile on her face, quickly tucking her phone away if I walked into the room. The late nights at yoga class that seemed to grow more frequent. But I brushed it all off. Laura wasn't like that. We trusted each other, or so I thought. It started small. One Friday evening, she came home later than usual. I'd cooked dinner, and the food had gone cold by the time she walked through the door. She was flustered, her hair messy, and she avoided eye contact. "Sorry," she said, dumping her bag by the door. "Class ran late." Then I grabbed a smoothie with the girls. I didn't press her. Why would I? People run late. Life happens. But as the weeks went on, it became a pattern. Late nights, vague explanations, and a growing distance between us. When we were together, she seemed elsewhere. Distracted. I'd ask her about her day, and she'd give me one-word answers before burying herself in her phone. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I casually asked, "Who are you always texting?" She didn't even flinch. "Just the group chat," she said, not looking up. "We're planning a surprise party for Amanda." Again, I let it slide. Why wouldn't I? I had no reason to doubt her. But a small voice in the back of my head whispered that something wasn't right. I ignored it. Until the night I couldn't. It was a Tuesday. Laura had gone to bed early after saying she wasn't feeling well. I stayed up, finishing some work on my laptop. Around midnight, I went to the kitchen to grab a drink, and that's when I saw it. Her phone, sitting on the counter, screen glowing with a notification. I don't know what possessed me to pick it up. I'd never been the type to invade her privacy. But something about the way she'd been acting made me hesitate. I glanced at the screen. It was a text message. "I miss you. Can't wait to see you again." My heart stopped. My hands were shaking as I unlocked her phone. I knew her passcode. It was our anniversary, something she'd never bothered to change. And there it was. A conversation thread with someone named Ryan. I felt sick as I scrolled through the messages. They weren't just flirty, they were explicit. Photos, inside jokes, plans to meet up. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was in a full-blown relationship with someone else. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, and the room spun around me. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Laura wasn't like that. She loved me. We were supposed to be a team. But the proof was right there in my hands. She'd been seeing this guy for months. Meeting him after her yoga classes, sneaking around while I worked late. All while I sat at home like an idiot, thinking everything was fine. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. Instead, I put her phone back where I found it and sat in the living room, staring at the wall until the sun came up. My thoughts were a chaotic mess: anger, betrayal, heartbreak, humiliation. I felt like a fool. But more than anything, I felt rage. She didn't just betray me, she threw everything we built together in the trash. All the late nights I'd worked to make sure she could have the life she wanted, the sacrifices I'd made so she could chase her dreams, they meant nothing to her. She didn't just cheat on me. She made me feel small. Invisible. Replaceable. By the time the sun rose, my anger had hardened into something sharper. I wasn't going to yell at her. I wasn't going to cry or beg for answers. No, if she wanted to betray me, I'd make sure she paid for it. The first step was gathering evidence. I knew I couldn't act on pure emotion, I had to be smart about this. So, over the next week, I played the part of the clueless husband. I smiled. I cooked dinner. I even suggested we go on a date night, just to keep up appearances. Meanwhile, whenever Laura wasn't looking, I dug deeper into her phone. I took screenshots of every incriminating text, every photo, and every little detail that tied her to Ryan. It was worse than I thought. She'd been seeing him for almost a year. He wasn't some random fling, he was a yoga instructor at her studio. Of course, he was. I imagined the two of them laughing at me behind my back, sneaking around while I worked late to pay the mortgage on the house they were probably fooling around in. The more I uncovered, the angrier I became. But I didn't let it show. I stayed calm, careful not to give her any reason to suspect I knew. If I was going to do this, I needed to do it right. I wanted her to feel the same pain she'd inflicted on me. The next step was protecting myself. I contacted a lawyer and explained the situation. He was blunt but sympathetic. If you can prove she's been unfaithful, the court will be on your side. But tread carefully. Don't do anything rash. I followed his advice. I filed for divorce quietly, without telling Laura. I started moving money out of our joint accounts and into a private account in my name. Nothing too noticeable, just a few hundred here, 1,000 there. Enough to give myself a safety net in case things got messy. But even that wasn't enough. I didn't just want to end the marriage. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her betrayal. She thought she could humiliate me, lie to me, and get away with it. She had no idea what I was capable of. I wasn't sure what my endgame was at first. All I knew was that Laura wasn't going to walk away from this unscathed. She had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and I wasn't about to let her skip off into the sunset with Ryan. I spent the next few weeks playing the long game. Laura seemed oblivious to my change in demeanor, mostly because I made sure she didn't notice. I was cheerful when she came home. I asked her about her day, brought her coffee in the mornings, and even suggested we start planning our next vacation. All the while, I was calculating my every move. Laura was either too comfortable in her double life or too stupid to realize how much she was slipping up. She left her phone out more often now, probably thinking I trusted her too much to ever look at it. She even told me outright when she had plans to stay out late. Yoga class is running a little late tonight, she'd say, slipping her mat into a tote bag. Her smile was sweet, but I saw through it now. Sure thing, I'd respond casually. Want me to leave dinner in the oven for you? Her face would light up with gratitude, like I was the perfect, supportive husband. You're the best. The best, huh? I bet Ryan was hearing the same thing. My days were spent at work, and my nights were spent planning. Every conversation, every piece of evidence I collected, every single detail was methodical. I didn't want to just end things, I wanted her to feel the humiliation, the heartbreak, and the helplessness she'd made me endure. The more I dug into Ryan, the more I learned. He wasn't just some yoga instructor scraping by, he had a habit of getting involved with married women. I found his Instagram and was almost impressed by how bold he was. Pictures of him hiking, sipping craft beers, and, surprise, surprise, snapping photos at the same vacation spots Laura had dreamed of visiting. They were hiding in plain sight, tagging their posts in the same locations just days apart. It was pathetic, really. He wasn't even good-looking. Tall, sure, but he had this ridiculous man bun and an overly confident smirk plastered on his face in every photo. I wondered if he even had a clue what he was stepping into. But Laura? Laura knew exactly what she was doing. And that's what made it worse. She wasn't some innocent person swept off her feet. She had chosen to betray me, lie to me, and disrespect everything we built together. That realization pushed me into action. I decided to put my plan into motion. One Friday night, Laura announced she was heading to a yoga retreat that would last the weekend. It's a really small group, she said, her voice light and carefree. Just a few of us, staying at a cabin upstate. Oh, sounds relaxing, I said with a smile. Have fun. You deserve it. Inside, I was seething. She deserved it. No. What she deserved was what was coming to her. As soon as she left, I went to work. The first thing I did was dig through her laptop. Laura was meticulous with her calendar, she scheduled everything, from work meetings to happy hours with friends. It didn't take long to find the cabin rental she'd booked. Ryan's name was on the reservation. It was almost too easy. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. She hadn't even bothered to cover her tracks. Either she thought I'd never figure it out, or she didn't care if I did. I called the cabin rental office and posed as Ryan. A little charm, a little feigned confusion about the reservation details, and they gave me everything I needed. The address, the length of the stay, even the security code to the door. That was when I decided it was time to meet Ryan. I waited until Saturday evening to make my move. I knew they'd be settled in by then, feeling comfortable and secure in their little love nest. When I pulled up to the cabin, the lights were on, and I could see movement through the large front windows. I parked my car down the road, out of sight, and approached on foot. As I got closer, I heard laughter. Laura's laugh, bright and carefree, carried through the night air. It made my stomach twist. Through the window, I saw them sitting on the couch, a bottle of wine open on the coffee table. Laura was leaning into him, her hand resting on his thigh. They looked like the perfect couple. I clenched my fists, taking a deep breath to steady myself. Bursting in there, screaming, flipping tables, it would be satisfying, sure, but it wasn't part of the plan. I wanted this to hurt. I wanted it to be memorable. I walked up to the front door, punched in the security code, and opened it. The look on their faces was priceless. Laura froze, her wine glass halfway to her lips. Ryan jumped up from the couch, his expression shifting from confusion to panic. "Hey there," I said casually, stepping inside and closing the door behind me. "Hope I'm not interrupting. What the hell are you doing here?" Laura's voice was shaky. She stood up, setting her glass down, her face pale. "I could ask you the same thing," I replied, my tone light. I looked at Ryan, who was visibly sweating now. "And you must be Ryan. Nice to finally meet you." Ryan didn't say a word. His eyes darted between me and Laura, clearly trying to figure out how to handle this. "Look," Laura started, stepping toward me, "I can explain." "Save it," I cut her off, holding up a hand. "I'm not here for your excuses." I turned to Ryan, who looked like he wanted to crawl out of his skin. You've been busy, huh? Teaching yoga, stealing people's wives. Must be exhausting. I didn't know she was married, Ryan stammered, his voice weak. I laughed bitterly. Oh, come on. Don't insult my intelligence. You knew exactly what you were doing. You two deserve each other. Ryan started to protest, but I ignored him. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and hit record. You're going to do me a favor, I said, my tone calm but firm. You're going to look into this camera and tell me everything. How long you've been seeing her, where you've been meeting, every little detail. And you're going to do it right now. What? No way, Ryan started, but I stepped closer, cutting him off. You don't want to make this harder than it needs to be, I said quietly. Because trust me, I'm already being generous by not calling the cops and having you thrown out of here for trespassing. Ryan looked at Laura, but she didn't say a word. She just stood there, frozen, her face a mask of guilt and fear. After a long pause, Ryan finally caved. He sat down and started talking. He gave me dates, locations, everything I already knew but wanted to hear him admit out loud. His voice was shaky, and his words tumbled out in a panicked mess. When he was done, I stopped recording and looked at Laura. You didn't think I'd find out, did you? I said, my voice cold. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Don't bother, I said, turning to leave. You're going to regret this, Laura. I promise you that. And with that, I walked out the door, leaving them to sit in the wreckage of their little fantasy world. When I drove away from the cabin that night, my hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would, not yet, at least. The image of Laura and Ryan together, her laughter filling the air, kept replaying in my mind. It was like a knife twisting deeper into my gut with every replay. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. By the time I got home, I had a new clarity. Anger had burned away the fog of heartbreak. What remained was cold, calculated resolve. I'd let them stew in their guilt and discomfort for a bit, but I wasn't just going to walk away from this. I was going to make sure Laura understood exactly what she had lost, and that Ryan learned what happens when you destroy someone else's life. The next day, I got to work. First, I called my lawyer. Did you get what you needed? He asked. Every word, I replied, forwarding the recording of Ryan's confession. Dates, details, and all the proof I could want. My lawyer chuckled. This is airtight. The court isn't going to be on her side when they see this. You've done your homework. I'm not done yet, I said. I want her out of the house. Fast. What's my next move? He walked me through the steps. With the evidence I had, I could file for divorce under grounds of infidelity, and the court would likely grant me the house, most of our assets, and anything else I requested. Laura wasn't going to walk away with much of anything, not after what she'd done. But I didn't just want to hit her financially. I wanted her to feel the sting in every part of her life. Once the legal side was handled, I turned my attention to Ryan. Over the next week, I did everything I could to dig into his life. Social media, professional profiles, old interviews, everything. It wasn't hard to find information on him. Guys like Ryan love showing off their lives for the world to see. He had hundreds of photos on Instagram, boasting about his yoga classes, outdoor retreats, and the mindful lifestyle he pretended to live. What I found most interesting, though, was that Ryan wasn't just some low-level yoga instructor. He was trying to make a name for himself in the fitness industry. He'd been hosting workshops, recording videos, and even pitching himself as a potential partner for wellness brands. That gave me an idea. I started contacting the studios where he taught, posing as a concerned husband. I told them I had proof that one of their instructors was involved in an affair with a married woman, that he'd knowingly broken up a marriage and caused irreparable harm. I'd hate for this to reflect poorly on your business, I said politely, attaching screenshots of Ryan's texts to Laura. But I thought you should know the kind of person you're associating with. Most of the studios responded with variations of the same thing: "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We'll look into it." I didn't need them to promise me anything. I just needed the seed of doubt planted in their minds. Next, I turned to the wellness brands he was trying to partner with. It didn't take long to find his posts tagging companies like Pure Vitality and Balance and Breath. I sent the same screenshots to them, framing it as a warning: "I noticed your company is associated with Ryan. I thought you should know about his unethical behavior and the way he's been using his position to exploit married women." By the end of the week, Ryan's polished, curated life was starting to crumble. One of his yoga studios removed him from their schedule, and a quick scroll through his Instagram showed fewer likes and fewer comments from his usual crowd of supporters. The image he had carefully crafted was falling apart piece by piece. But I wasn't done with Laura yet. The following Friday, she came home from work to find me sitting at the kitchen table, her phone resting in front of me. Her eyes immediately went wide, and her face paled. She must have known what was coming. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm. "What's going on?" she stammered, dropping her bag by the door. I gestured to the seat across from me. "Sit." She hesitated, her eyes darting between me and her phone, before slowly sinking into the chair. For a moment, I just stared at her. I wanted to memorize this moment, the fear in her eyes, the way her hands fidgeted nervously in her lap. This was the woman who had lied to me for months, the woman who had laughed with Ryan while I sat at home wondering what I'd done wrong. "I know," I said finally, my voice low and steady. Her breath hitched. "No, what?" "Everything." I slid her phone across the table, unlocked, with the text thread between her and Ryan pulled up. "I've known for weeks. And I've been busy." She stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. "I've already filed for divorce," I continued, leaning back in my chair. "The papers will be here in a few days. And before you even try to fight me on this, you should know that I have all the proof I need to make sure you walk away with nothing." "Wait," she said, her voice shaking. "Please, just let me explain." "Explain what?" I snapped, cutting her off. "Explain how you lied to me every time you left this house. How you laughed behind my back with that piece of trash while I was working late to pay for this house. Don't insult me, Laura." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No pity. She had made her choice. "I was unhappy," she said quietly, her voice breaking. "I didn't know how to tell you. Unhappy." I repeated, leaning forward. "And your solution was to cheat? To lie? You didn't even give me a chance, Laura. You threw everything away without a second thought. And now you're going to deal with the consequences." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. For a moment, I just watched her. The old me might have softened, might have tried to comfort her. But that version of me was gone. "I'll be staying in the house," I said finally, standing up. "You can start packing your things this weekend. My lawyer will be in touch." She looked up at me, her face red and tear-streaked. "What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem," I said coldly. Without another word, I walked out of the kitchen and left her there, crying. Over the next few weeks, Laura moved out. I watched as she packed her things, her once confident demeanor now replaced with quiet defeat. She didn't try to argue or beg for another chance. She knew it was pointless. As for Ryan, I heard through the grapevine that his reputation had taken a serious hit. Word of his affair had spread through the yoga community, and his opportunities dried up fast. The golden boy who thought he could take whatever he wanted had been exposed for the fraud he was. I didn't just take my life back, I took control of the narrative. Laura and Ryan thought they could humiliate me, but in the end, they were the ones left picking up the pieces of their shattered lives. It wasn't justice in the traditional sense, but it was enough. Once Laura was out of the house, I thought I'd feel relief. Freedom. Closure. For weeks, I had poured everything into dismantling her life and tearing apart the fantasy she had built with Ryan. I had taken back control. The house was mine, the divorce proceedings were moving in my favor, and Ryan's reputation had taken a nosedive. Everything was falling into place. But instead of relief, I felt nothing. I'd won. That's what I kept telling myself. So why did the house feel so empty? Why was every room so quiet? Why did I lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the sound of Laura's laughter from my head? I told myself it was just the adjustment period. After 8 years of marriage, it made sense that there would be an emptiness. But as the days turned into weeks, that emptiness didn't go away. It grew. At first, I ignored it. I focused on work, throwing myself into new projects and late nights at the office. But no matter how busy I kept myself, the quiet was always waiting for me when I got home. One night, I was scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself, when I saw it, a notification from a shared photo album Laura and I had created years ago. I'd forgotten to unshare it after the divorce started. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. There they were, photos from vacations, birthdays, lazy Sundays on the couch. There was one of Laura grinning at me over the rim of her coffee cup, her hair a mess, no makeup, her eyes sparkling in the morning light. Another of us at the beach, her arm around my waist as she kissed my cheek. I stared at that one for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen. I should delete this, I thought. I should close the album and forget it ever existed. But I couldn't. Instead, I scrolled through every photo, letting the memories wash over me like a tide I couldn't hold back. And that's when it hit me, I had destroyed everything. Not just Laura's life, my own, too. A week later, I got a call from my lawyer. "It's done," he said. The judge signed off on the settlement. The divorce is final. It was what I wanted. What I had fought for. But hearing those words didn't bring the closure I'd hoped for. Instead, it left me with a hollow ache in my chest. I didn't tell anyone about how I was feeling. My friends congratulated me on moving on and taking my power back. They didn't see the nights I spent staring at the empty side of the bed, wondering if I had gone too far. I'd loved Laura once. Deeply. And no matter how much I hated what she'd done, I couldn't erase those feelings entirely. I couldn't erase the years we'd spent together, the memories we'd built, the life we'd shared. One night, I finally caved. I picked up the phone and called her. It rang twice before going to voicemail. I didn't expect her to answer. Why would she? But something in me needed to say the words out loud. "Laura," I said after the beep. "It's me. I don't know why I'm calling. I guess I just wanted to say that I'm sorry. Not for ending things, but for how I did it. For what I did. I was angry, and I wanted to hurt you, and I think I lost sight of everything else in the process. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, and I don't expect you to. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry." I hung up before I could say anything else. 2 days later, I got a call from her sister, Megan. I hadn't spoken to Megan since the divorce began, so I was surprised to see her name on my phone. When I answered, her voice was shaky. "It's Laura," she said, her words coming out in a rush. She's gone." For a moment, I didn't understand what she was saying. "What do you mean, gone?" Megan's voice cracked, and she started sobbing. "She overdosed. They found her last night in her apartment. I thought you'd want to know." My legs gave out, and I sank into a chair, the phone pressed to my ear. What? My voice was barely above a whisper. She wasn't doing well after the divorce, Megan said, her words thick with tears. She didn't tell anyone how bad it was, but I should have known. I should have. Megan broke down again, and I just sat there, staring at the floor as her words washed over me. Laura was gone. It didn't feel real. After Megan hung up, I sat in silence for what felt like hours. I replayed every moment of the last few months in my head, every choice I'd made, every word I'd said. I thought about the look on her face when I told her to pack her things, the tears in her eyes when I told her it wasn't my problem where she went. I'd wanted her to hurt. I'd wanted her to feel the same pain she had inflicted on me. But I never wanted this. The funeral was small, attended only by close friends and family. I sat in the back, not sure if I had any right to be there. Megan gave me a cold glance when she saw me but didn't say anything. As the service went on, I kept my head down, my hands clenched in my lap. People got up to speak about Laura, about how kind she was, how funny, how full of life. I wanted to stand up and tell them they were wrong, that she wasn't perfect, that she'd hurt me, betrayed me, but the words wouldn't come. Because they weren't wrong. Laura had been kind. She had been funny and full of life. And somewhere along the way, we had both lost sight of that. After the service, I stayed behind as everyone else left. I stood by her grave, staring at the freshly turned earth, the weight of everything pressing down on my chest. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice breaking. "For everything." The wind was the only response. In the weeks that followed, I tried to move on. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the guilt. I'd wanted revenge, but I'd never considered the cost. In the end, it hadn't just been Laura who paid the price, it had been both of us. Revenge doesn't heal wounds. It doesn't bring closure. It only leaves you with ashes and regrets. And now, every time I close my eyes, I see Laura's face, her laughter echoing in my mind. She's gone, but the emptiness she left behind remains. And I have to live with that for the rest of my life.